All right, welcome back to another episode of what we call Musky Fishing Basics. I'm out today with Madison Musky fishing guide Jeff Hansen, Musky Whisperer, and we're doing a little bit of trolling. So today we're going to talk a little bit about trolling tips. So Jeff, for the guy that's just getting started into musky fishing, you decided you want to do a little bit of trolling. Generally, what's the rod reel setup like for your trolling setups?
Well, typically I'm usually running a 6-rod spread up. Even if I have another person on their boat here in Wisconsin where I'm at, I can legally run 3 lines per person, and typically even if I have 3 people in the boat, I'll still run 6 because generally it's really weedy here and it's hard to control more rods than that. So typically I'm running a down rod, which is this rod, and this down easter that's straight down, and I typically run a shorter rod for that. You don't need anything long. I usually run a 6 or 6.5 footer, and then I'll typically run a longer rod, which is called my long rod, 10 footer, and with those I always have line counters. This is Shimano Dakota. This is one of the better line counters that I found. It's really important to keep track of how much line you got out, so if a fish hits, you're able to replicate it. And then I troll with mono. I use 40-pound high seas mono. Just for me, it just seems to hook up fish better. And then you'll see when I bring this in that these all have, every bait I put out, I run weight on it, not necessarily for depth control, but for weed control. The bait I'm trolling, there's a 22 long, which I don't really need the weight for depth control, but I need the weight for catching weeds. We're trolling along. I mean, you can see the weeds that me and Jeff have already picked up today, trolling. There's a lot of surface weeds, and the weeds will slide down to catch on that weight, and then you just clean them off. And if I'm trolling the same areas, I'll just throw them in my splash bowl in the back. But with that 10-foot rod, that 22 long that I'm running, I mean, that's spreading it out longer from the boat. So my down rods, I want right straight back behind the boat. I tend to run more weight on those to keep those closer to the boat in the prop wash. And then these 10 footers, I'll run them out longer, and that way you don't end up running into tangles that way. And then I'll run a board rod too. I mean, if it's too weedy, then I'll just run all bolt rods, but today it's not too bad. Then for my planer board rod, I don't know if you can see the planer board out in the background, I like running 7 to 7.5 footers for that. You don't really need anything longer than that, and you can get away with shorter ones too. But again, good line counters are important, and just that way you can keep a really nice spread. And the same thing on the other side of the boat. I'll have one down rod set closer to the boat with more weight on it, one a little bit longer, and I'll run depths. I mean, some of my planer board stuff I got, the baits are only 5 feet deep, even though we're out in 22, 23 feet of water. My planer boards, I'll keep up higher. My boat rod stuff, I'll keep deeper. Usually my down rods are my deepest baits.
So Jeff, I think the one thing we didn't cover necessarily was the leader. What type of leader are you using for all your trolling setups?
I'll bring in this one quick. I'm using a 6-foot long, 100-pound fluorocarbon leader. I have John from Stealth Tackle make them for me. I'm using the longer leader. That way I got 60 inches in between the weight and the bait. That way the weight isn't killing any of the action on the bait. And even if the weeds collect up on this weight, it's still 60 inches away from the bait, so you'll still get fish to bite it. And that way the longer leader's nice too. If you get a fish to roll up in it, then you got a long leader. But that long leader's nice when you're using that weight. When, I mean, as I mentioned before, you don't always need it for depth control, but catching the weeds, you definitely need it out here.
So Jeff, what dictates whether or not you're going to make a transition from casting to trolling? And then we can talk, one last thing we'll cover yet would be speed for guys that are looking to start trolling, and then we can maybe make a quick run over baits as far as like what are good baits for guys that are trolling. So what target, or what makes you make the transition into trolling from casting?
Once the water temps get warmer, especially mid 70s, a lot of the fish slide out of the weeds, especially here in the Madison chain. Right now it's kind of in between. It's 72, 73, so there's still a good amount of fish in the weeds, but a lot of the bigger fish have moved out over the open water. You can get them casting too, but trolling you just cover a lot more water that way. But generally once the water's in the 70s, then a lot of the bluegills are already done spawning in the perch, and they slide out deeper. So you just troll around or drive around first and find the heaviest concentrations of bait and put your lines out and troll through it, and eventually you're going to run into a hungry muskie. Speed-wise, as you were mentioning, yep. If the water's dirty, if we get a really strong algae bloom, I'll keep it closer to 3.4, 3.5. miles per hour. If the water's clear, I'll keep it a lot closer to 4, even up to 4.2. If it's crystal clear, 4.5 miles an hour. That way the fish can't get a really good look at the bait, and you can cover a lot of water that way.
All right, so then I would assume as you go to the fall, you're going to transition your speed back to slower speeds?
Yeah, if I'm trolling, definitely in November, once the water temps are under 55, 50, and in the 40s, then I'll drop down. Even if the water's clear, I'll still do 3.5. I mean, if the water's dirty, then I'll stick closer to 3. If the water's clear, which it normally is here in the fall, I'll stick closer to 3.5.
All right, and then one last question, Jeff. So bait size, when guys are out trolling, not necessarily here in the southern Wisconsin area, but everywhere, is there a certain, like if you're gonna, let's just say you would go pick a random lake in northern Wisconsin and you want to start trolling, is there a certain size that you're gonna start with?
You know, if I'm trolling in the spring, I'll use more 5 and 6 inch stuff. This time of year, I kind of mixing it up with some stuff. You know, we were running, you know, these 22 longs, which is a 7.5 inch bait, and also I'll mix it up and put some bigger stuff out. You know, like this 10 inch Believer from Drifter will catch a lot of big fish on those. Yeah, so you just kind of mix it up. Sometimes the fish want big baits, sometimes the fish want small baits, but summertime usually very rarely am I running stuff under 7 to 10 most of the time, and I'll mix it up, and if fish are hitting this Believer, then I'll put another one out, and if I get another hit, I'll end up with 3 or 4 of them out. So just kind of dictate and let the fish tell you what they want for size wise.
Awesome. There you go. That's another Musky Fishing Basics. That's trolling tips. This is number 1. I have a few other people lined up to do some trolling stuff this summer, and we'll get a little bit more in-depth, and we'll also get you a little more perspective from another person for trolling. Jeff, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Just go to my website, MadisonMuskieGuide.com. It has all my information on there, and you'll see lots of pictures of big fish caught from Madison, and my email and telephone number are on there.
Awesome. Well, if you guys, if you're new here and you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications so you get all the, or hit the bell so you get all the notifications, and we thank you all for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.